Good morning, everybody. 10:15 on the dot. I even got a glass of water. Isn't that great? Let's start with prayer. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Gracious God, we give you thanks for the gift of St. Columba's, for the way that it gives us a space for holy conversation. We ask that in all things you continue to direct us and guide us so that we may live our days in your most holy name. Amen. Well, friends, thank you for coming to this part 2 of the Get to Know Hillary seminars. I guess that's what we'll call them. I am just delighted to be with you all, and here we are together on our third Sunday. I thought what we would do this time, as I promised last time, is I was grateful for all the questions, and I'll take a few more at the end, but I actually have questions for you today. And so the first question I'm going to ask you, I'm going to tell you now while I get us warmed up so you can be thinking about it. When I was with you at Columba Day back in June, I asked us all to enter into a season of prayer and fasting. If you were able to do that, if you shared in some prayer or fasting, think about what that experience was like for you, because I'm going to invite you to share some of that a little bit later in the session. Okay, so forewarned is forearmed. I wanted to start, though, by talking to you a little bit about my understanding of fasting and why I thought that would be a good thing to ask us to do way back in June, even though it's not the most glamorous of spiritual practices. I'm one part Irish and I'm one part Native American. My tribe is Chippewa, and our reservation is in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. If anybody is ever there, please do stop on by. All right, Michigan, we got, yes, Michiganders in the house. Fantastic. Upper Peninsula as well? Yes, the UP. We've got some Oopers here. This is great. So it is one of my absolute delights to be able to engage in both sides of that kind of spiritual DNA, if you will. In fact, part of my research, especially right after the pandemic, really started to turn into what my tribe calls, and what many indigenous people call, blood memory. Blood memory. Now, blood memory is more than just kind of scientific DNA. It's the stuff that makes up your very soul. Not just kind of like, if you have a certain DNA makeup, you'll have brown hair and be a certain height, but rather, who is in your lineage, who has been helping to lift you up your whole life, those things also matter spiritually and become part of your spiritual DNA. That's the blood memory. What's been fascinating about that research is to watch science catch up to what indigenous wisdom already knows. For those of you who work in epigenetics, DNA research, you know that what they're finding is we can inherit things from our ancestors that go beyond just the normal DNA as we think of it. Take trauma, take depression, for example, PTSD responses. What science is finding out is that 3 generations will be affected when somebody has experienced trauma in their life. So, for example, if your grandmother suffered a deep trauma, her daughter and you will also have different responses within your own DNA to how you will respond to stress and trauma. To use the scientific word, the methylation response changes within DNA, and it can actually change the way you process things. Isn't that fascinating? My hypothesis when I was doing writing and research on this was that it's not just those sorrows, those traumas that can actually change a person, but it's also the spiritual virtues and joys that can help change a person on a soul level. So, for example, we'll take the parental virtue of gratitude. We call it the parental virtue because it gives birth to so many other virtues. And we hear about gratitude in Paul's letter to the Philippians, for example, when he talks about rejoicing always, even in his hardest times. What we find about gratitude from the science, again, it tells us that it too has an even physical cellular change for us as a human being. When we practice gratitude, our heart rates are stronger, our organs function better, we have greater mental clarity and creativity. We actually are better at connecting with other people because the hormones that regulate connection are actually firing on all 4 cylinders. So I think what's going to happen is science will catch up closer and closer, again, with that indigenous wisdom, that the stuff of life, the way that we are taught to practice our faith and to practice our spirit, matters as much as also the biology in which we are born. Isn't that fascinating? I think so. Why am I telling you all this about this research? One, because I find it fascinating. But two, because I believe churches become a place where that deep spiritual DNA gets instilled within us. It can help heal us, help change our lives when we've been touched by trauma or grief, but even more, it can help change a lifetime for so many people. Who here was blessed to kind of grow up in a church somewhere? Maybe not this church, but yes. Wonderful, beautiful, lots of hands. And it has, I would wager you're here today in no small part because of some of the spiritual ancestors in those faith traditions, right? You know, people who lifted you up. It could be your parents, your grandparents. It could not be somebody you're related to at all. It could be a priest or a lay reader or a Sunday school teacher, right? They are your spiritual ancestors as much as people in your family are as well. So I believe churches become these places, these incubators, if you will, of not just hoping that people's lives will be changed, but actually changing them on like a cellular level. Like that's what I think we're doing here with God and the Holy Spirit. One of the sorts of practices that I have found both through my blood DNA, both on the Celtic side and in the Native American side, and my blood memory, is the spiritual practice of fasting. Both sides of those traditions hold it as a prized spiritual change agent, if you will. As I've said in many sermons now, it kind of makes you hungry to do something with God when you're fasting. It also connects you to those in need by remembering those who might be hungering alongside you that day. It also reminds you that you rely on God, that we are all truly creatures that still need food and water and rest, right? You know, it's a very clarifying practice. I find after I've fasted for a while, I tend to be able to hear the Spirit's movement even just slightly more. It's like you've cleared the antenna for your spiritual prayer antenna, and you can not hear as much static anymore. One time that I engaged in a fast that I don't think I knew at the time was about you all, but looking back on it, I think it was on my 40th birthday. For my 40th birthday, some people like to have parties and fun things like that. I went up to my tribe in October. Remember, I said it was the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, right? Chilly. Read cold, read snowing. And I decided to engage with my tribe on a deep type of fast, often known as a vision quest. This sort of fast requires the faster to go and sit on the land by yourself for 3 days and 3 nights without food, without water, without sleep, and without company. So you just are there by yourself, you and the land. Again, I'm not much of a party animal. This is what I did for my 40th. I know it's not that fun, but but it was an engaging in that blood memory ritual. Lots of things happen in a vision quest. With my tribe, you start first in a sweat lodge before you are then placed outside the sweat lodge where your face is painted with charcoal to take the shine of your living self off because you're about to enter the spirit world is how they view it. I like to think about this much like the way Moses is asked to veil himself when he comes down off the mountain, lest the shine of being in God's presence is too much. Then you go and you find the place where you and the fire keeper have designated where you will stay for 3 days and 3 nights. I was blessed to be on Sugar Island, which is where my grandfather was born, and so it was truly ancestral land. 2 important things they want you to think about while you're out there. One is that you're in an energy exchange with the land. The land is healing you, and you are healing the land. This is so critical for us who are engaging in the spirit of creation right now, the season of creation. We have to remember that we are not just called to be stewards of the earth as though we're here to save it. We're part of the earth. If it's sick, we are sick. If we have made it so, whenever we hurt the earth, we are hurting ourselves. And so the beauty of sitting on the land is that it's to remind you of your place in creation as being sitting with what they call your first family, truly, the creation itself. So you sit there and in this energy exchange. The other thing to remember is that this is not for you as the person who's on the fast. And this is true of any fast, big or small, that we do. The way that the indigenous people see it is that fasting and practices like it are for you to grow in your capacity to be a good elder, right? A lot of time, I think we engage in these things nowadays, these spiritual practices, so that we'll become a better version of ourselves. Oh, fine, that's nice. But it's not actually about us. It's about the community that we are supposed to be responding to. So when you're on a vision quest, for example, the fasting serves the purpose of perhaps hearing a message that's larger than yourself for your community itself. You might see things, you might hear things, things might be given to you. When I was on this vision quest, lots of things were seen. Some things you're told not to tell people, so that it's between you and the spirit, I should say. But on the other hand, there are some things that you're supposed to come back and share. And one of those things, which is what I really believe is for us here today, was this idea of being able to become so still and so quiet that God was able to change something to motivate me and to help, I think, bring about a different version of Hillary. Let me explain what I mean by that. When I went into the forest, I was 39, and my birthday was going to be the last day of this fast, and I had all sorts of plans of things I was going to do while I was out there. Even then, I thought I would make myself a little agenda for this fast. And what it was going to be was I was going to bring my Bible with me and my Book of Common Prayer, and I was going to read through all 4 Gospels while I was out there, and I was going to pray the office every day and all that. But a funny thing happens to you when you stop putting in a lot. Now, in this case, it was food, and it was water, and it was other stimulus, right? I wasn't watching TV or my phone or anything while I was out there, for example. What I found is what the mystics describe as kind of entering into the cloud of unknowing. I wasn't digesting a whole lot of stuff. I wasn't even digesting the demons I thought I would see in my own self, right? Wrestling with my own struggles. Everything became very quiet, so quiet. I couldn't even pick up the Bible and read more than half of the Gospel of John. I just couldn't process that much. And it wasn't because I was very hungry or very tired. Actually, one of the beautiful things about a vision quest is even though you're doing it on your own in a way, the community is deeply praying for you, deeply, in a way that I'm not sure I see all the time. For example, the fire keeper is there stoking the fire the entire time you are there, and it's an honored position to be the fire keeper. They are awake the entire 3 days just as you are. And if they feel themselves getting cold, they take it as you being cold, and so they'll stoke the fire hotter so that you feel it where you are. Or people who are praying alongside the fire keeper, if somebody suddenly gets hungry, they believe it's because you're hungry, and so they will eat on your behalf. Isn't that beautiful? Because again, you're doing this for them, and so they're doing it for you. This is that energy exchange. I can tell you, I'm a woman with a healthy appetite, but I wasn't hungry even once while I was out there. I can only attribute it to that type of deep, deep prayerful covering that I was under. I was cold, I will say. It did get cold. And as I said, it snowed, but it was part of it. So the mystics call that the cloud of unknowing, this place where you enter into spiritually, where while you are still conscious of yourself, you are also now meeting God on God's terms. It's not just for you to come and say, God, here's all my litany of things all day, every day. You've gotten quiet enough where you and God can exist together. It's rare for me to have been able to, I had to go into the woods for 3 days to be able to have this sort of a moment. But why I think it's about us is because when we come here to this place, so many of us, every one of us, is coming with so much on our hearts. We're digesting a lot, aren't we? We have the world and how it's on fire right now. We have our own personal things that we're going through. Many of us have worries. Probably all of us do. We have our families, ourselves. We might be in physical pain. No matter what it is that we bring into this place, what we are invited to do is to lift all that up to God, not pretend like it's not there. It's not toxic positivity of just saying, oh, it's fine, I don't want to look at it. But to lift it up so much to God that it too enters the cloud of unknowing, where it becomes untethered from the stuff of this world and gets to meet God here. Our hearts get to do that. That's what I believe we do in the Sanctus when we lift up our hearts, but also whatever we bring on our hearts gets to do that as well. That's one of the things that on the Vision Quest I knew was going to be for something next, whatever was next. And it turns out it was you all. I didn't even know that that was coming, but it's this sort of a place where when I was interviewing and I found you all, like it just kind of felt like that here we are able to name what is on our hearts, lift them to God, and let them be perhaps untethered for a moment, but also then we take action on them as we go. So that's why one of the reasons why fasting was such an important call, both in my life, but also in the life of all pilgrims, as I said on Columba's Day, where like Celts would start out with a fast for this very reason, so that they were making sure they were listening to God, that they were listening to that deep, deep voice of the Spirit, free from all the extra stuff that we tend to have. So my hope is that when we were fasting together, you all maybe felt something, maybe had a seed from the Spirit be planted in your heart. For myself, when I was fasting on Fridays with you all between June and now, it has helped me kind of get calm again, to think, wow, this is going to be a really big job. Am I up to the challenge? Will I have what it takes? Well, all the things. I can't believe I'm moving to DC right now. It feels like moving towards Mordor, right? All these sorts of things. Like, how's this going to work? But there was a peacefulness that came in every time that reminded me of that larger fast, that peacefulness that tells me it's a bit of what the Spirit is planting here and now. And so I thank you for being the reason that I was fasting on those Fridays. I wonder, in any of your prayers or fasting in between between June and now, did you all hear something? Did you feel something, even a small stirring of the Spirit? Please, will you mind taking the mic? It would be great to hear you. Come on, let me grab this for you, Molly. Testing. Okay, I think we're good. Molly, maybe a little louder. I did turn it on. Is it on? Let's try it again, Molly.
I'm Molly Carr.
Sorry, Molly, one more moment. I think Jamal's getting it. It's all good? Try it now.
I'm Molly Carr.
Thank you.
Okay, I was in this church from a little child with Cynthia and Roland Hoover, and I was brought back to this church in May in April with a passion, because my parents had both died. My dad died in April on Palm Sunday. And I came back to this church, and I missed your sharing, your first sharing on St. Columba's Day, because my father's and mother's memorial service was the day before. But I feel like I was there now, because ever since their memorial service, I've been feeling such a passion about Native American wisdom and teaching and spirit. And I was just overjoyed to hear about your background. I've always felt a passion. I remember my mom reading "Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee" when I was like 7, and I was like, what is this? And I've always felt that. And I love the Potomac River, and I went yesterday to I found a sacred spot where there's these big, beautiful cliffs, and someone had told me that there's petroglyphs there, and I'm on a little quest to find the petroglyphs. I found arrowheads in the Potomac Gorge. I have a friend whose land is in the Potomac Gorge. She's found arrowheads. And I'm feeling this strong drawing to connect with the generations of people that were here before, and we can find that in our blood.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you. And thank you for vulnerably naming, too, the passing of your parents. I'm so sorry. One of the things that you are lifting up, though, is how grief can also be a type of a fast, can't it? Right? We're grieving the people or the things that we don't have access to anymore. And you're also then naming the way that that kind of a deep grief fast can lead us to see things anew, that the Spirit can find that as a broken, open place, and new ways of praying, new ways of being in the world, a sense of wonder can come through that as well. Thank you. Other people? Okay, great. Thank you. Brave soul. Thank you very much.
I have been feeling a sense of joy, unexplained joy and calmness despite what's going on in our world. And I tell people that, and they say, what in the world? You know, the world is so, but it's real. I just have this sort of underlying sense of calm and peace and joy. And joy, I'm sort of like you with my lists, and I'm very type A. So joy is not a natural underpinning in my personality.
It's work, right? Thank you. Thank you. It's one of the gifts of the Spirit. That's beautiful. And there's something about this moment that's just opening that up in you. It's beautiful. Thank you. Anybody else? Maybe one more? Okay, thank you. Let me pass that down. Thanks.
You mentioned last week that at the age of 4 you had this idea that you'd become a priest. Could you tell us a little bit more about your childhood religious experience? Was your household, were you churchgoers? Were you an Episcopalian from the beginning? How did that evolve to actually bring you into the priesthood?
Sure. Some of the blood memory piece, absolutely. So I was blessed to be raised an Episcopalian, cradle to grave, unless something strange happens. That's my plan. And the other beautiful thing about it is that both of my parents were very active in our local church. Very small rural church in Pennsylvania, St. Peter's. But they were also part of the Cursillo movement. If maybe some of you, I see some head shaking. Cursillo was a very large revival movement that went through both the Catholic Church, the Episcopal Church, and some other denominations. So it was helping, you know, what sometimes we get called the frozen chosen. It was kind of helping shake us up a little bit. And so my parents were large into that as well, which is often why I put so much stock in the Holy Spirit, I believe, because they helped to instill that in me. But there's never been another priest in my family or pastor. Sometimes people ask that. So I don't know, it kind of came out of nowhere. I don't But yes, so very strong church background. The other piece of where I grew up, very few people even knew what an Episcopalian was, so I was kind of weird. People would say, is that Christian? Because I grew up in a place that was either you were Roman Catholic, Missouri Synod Lutheran, which is different than the one we normally think of, and or Baptist/evangelical, right? So most of my friends were on that side of it, and I'll just give one quick story to kind of illustrate this. I used to go to my friend's Bible study all the time, and his name was David, and his mom loved me. She thought I was great. In fact, one day she came up to me and she said, oh, you know, I'm only like 16 when she says this, but she's like, you know, David you'd make such a good wife for David, and he wants to be a pastor someday, and you'd make a great pastor's wife. And I said, well, thank you. But I want to be a pastor when I grow up. And she looked at me and she said, oh, well, then I'll have to pray for you because you'll lead yourself and the soul of your congregation to hell. I mean, it was that fast of a turn. And also, I'm sorry, guys. I really hope I don't do that to you all. But you know, it's that kind of a turn. So my growing up was both I had a really strong church, but kind of had to fight, I guess, is not fight. I had to carve out my understanding of what faith was in real-time conversation with people for whom my evangelical friends taught me a lot about reading the Bible and taking it seriously. On the other hand, not necessarily taking me seriously, right? So, yeah, thank you. All right, here are my questions for you all. And I've been asking these questions of our small group and the vestry. So the small group's on Wednesday. So if you come to one of those, act surprised, will you? And just answer these questions anew. But I'm using this style of research that's like an appreciative inquiry, which is something I love to do, especially when I'm doing ethnographic studies for some of my research. So you all, if you don't mind, I'm going to compile a little study on you as we go. And each one of these is kind of a past, present, future sort of oriented question. So if you feel like you need to close your eyes to get to the heart of these questions, feel free. Here's the first one. Tell me a story, briefly, when you felt most proud of being part of this congregation. What was happening? Who was involved? What did those positive feelings prompt in you? I'll repeat it. Briefly, tell me a story about a time when you felt most proud of being part of this congregation. What was happening? Who was involved? What did those positive feelings prompt in you? All right, anybody want to go first? Okay, great. Let me bring you the mic. Here you go.
One of the most important times in my life was when Ledley became our rector.
Oh.
And he really moved me to the point where I was really eager to learn. And it's like having God with us. And that's what Ledley did for me.
Knowing him well, it is like having a little piece of God with you. That's true. That's beautiful. I actually get to talk with him in about 2 weeks, and I have tons of questions for him and his wisdom, so I'm going to ask him to be a little godlike for me as well. Anybody else? Yes, please.
I think I was proudest of St. Columba's when they took on the partnership with Truesdale Elementary School. And it felt initially like sort of the typical Lady Bountiful, we're going to go help these poor people thing.
Right, yeah.
But the congregation and the people who participated took it on in a deep and meaningful way and were there for years of engagement. And all the way until those, I think, kindergartners or first graders graduated from high school and then on to college. And that kind of seriousness and dedication was an inspiring form of giving in a way that was not just about us.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Yes, I see a hand over here. Thank you.
So this is perhaps a moment of pride that is symbolic of a perhaps greater ongoing many moments of pride. It was one day I was sitting in the service. Joshua was preaching, and a gentleman who was clearly homeless walked in the middle of the sermon, walked all the way up the front, and I could tell people were thinking, how is this going to go? And Joshua said, "Hi, Howie, it's great to see you. Welcome." And then he continued on with his sermon. And I thought, holy cow, like that is so much larger than that moment.
Yes, it is.
And so much went into that to be able to say, "Hi, Howie, welcome." And I was very proud of that.
I'm blown away by that. That's beautiful. Thank you. Yes, Anne. Anne, and then I'll come right over here. Yes.
But I was trying to think of this, but I think one of the 2 times I really was proud is when I was elected a delegate to the diocesan convention. I loved it. I love the Episcopal Church so much, and it was wonderful to not only represent St. Columba's, but to have with my votes, have an influence on our diocese because especially for the resolutions, because the ones that are approved to go on to the General Convention. And it was just a wonderful experience. And now Ludley asked me a few years ago to coordinate the delegates for each convention, so I'm doing that now. And again, I just love it, and I was just so proud and honored to be a delegate representing St. Columba's.
Thank you, Anne. As a church rat myself, I know what you mean. It's something beautiful, isn't it?
I helped to host a meeting of our interfaith book group here, and there were people from all faiths. And I've been here for 40 plus years, so it was like describing home to them. But I was so proud to tell them about our water ministry and about the Great Patrol and the things that we did for the community. But there were a couple of women from the LDS church there.
Oh, yeah.
And so they came up to me and they said, well, I'm so impressed with what your church does for the larger community. What about your welfare program? Oh. And I looked at them and went,
Yeah.
So I was so proud of us, but I realized that we're a little bit different also.
Interesting. Thank you. Okay, I think we have time for one more. How about we go right over here?
I'll keep it brief. I was asked to co-lead a grief group, and I was hesitant at first because I wasn't sure what my expertise or background was, but I learned so much from the members of that group and care so much for them and their loved ones and their stories, and it's beautiful. It was probably one of the best things that has happened in my time in this church community.
That's really beautiful. Thank you. I love that. I love it when it's full circle, right? Something we thought we were going to help somebody else with, and it helps us just as much. Okay, that was question 1. Look how well we're doing already. Okay, question 2. Again, you can close your eyes if you'd like. Tell me about an important spiritual experience, lesson in belief, or step of faith that has occurred for you during your tenure here at St. Columba's Church. Describe what and how this happened. So again, this is like the spiritual stuff, not just the head, but the spiritual. Tell me about an important spiritual exercise, lesson in belief, or step of faith that has occurred for you during your tenure at St. Columba's Church. Describe what and how this happened, briefly. Thank you. I see a hand back here. Okay, here I come. You guys are helping me get my steps in. Thank you.
This is a very emotional one for me. My late husband, out of the clear blue, was diagnosed with a cancer that was expected to be fatal within a month. St. Columba's rallied. We created a Caring Bridge page, and people stood so by us every step of the way. As it turned out, he had an indomitable will to live as long as possible for his young daughter, and he lived for almost 3 years through agonizing surgery and great pain. But he always felt grateful. He said, well, at least I'm here as long as I'm here. It's not dementia. And this community, it just was extraordinary in every way. It was not just the meals. It was somebody tapping me on the shoulder and saying, you don't know me well, but you're in my prayers. It was so incredible. And I see us, and the grief group has been mentioned, I see us continuing to take what we experience, even the sad things, and turning it forward when we can stand by others. So it's like we're creating, Emerson had a term, oversoul, and it's like our individual experiences, because we share them, become an soul that we can all draw on when we need it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yes, Steve.
My spiritual experience is vicarious, and it's a show and tell here. So if everybody can put down their kneelers for a second, just look at your kneelers. About 15 years ago, 100 women of the church, led by my wife, Sally Komisky, Madeline Peeler, and Debbie Dussault, worked for over 10 years to design and create those kneelers. Each one took over a year. So every time we kneel to pray or whatever, I think about all the women of the church and what they did for each other.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And to get us to kneel, too. That's beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, I think we have time for one more, so we can get to our third question, too. Anybody else want to share a time of spiritual growth, transformation? All the way up here. Here I come. That's great. It'll get me back to the front. Thank you.
For me, sometime in the early 2000s, I decided to take Margaret Gunther up on her sessions of sort of spiritual development and growth. And I did that for 12 years.
Wow.
And it was, for me, the most opening kind of experience. And I was able to do things that I would not have been able to do without that.
Thank you. The Spirit's empowering. Thank you very much. These are beautiful, everybody. Okay, here's your last question. You can close your eyes again if you'd like. Imagine that tonight you fall asleep and didn't wake up for 5 years. In the time that you slept, St. Columba's Church has become everything you always wanted it to be. This has resulted in many positive and highly effective changes in the congregation and in the world. As you awaken, what do you see happening that is new, positive, and different? Okay, I'll say that again. Imagine that tonight you fall asleep and you don't wake up for 5 years. In the time that you slept, St. Columba's Church has become everything you always wanted it to be. This has resulted in many positive and highly effective changes in the congregation and its ministry. As you awaken, what do you see happening that's new, positive, and different, both here and in the world? Okay, got a hand up immediately. Here we go.
I would see racial diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes.
Develop and spread, because we need that. I mean, look what's happening now.
Yeah.
It's being taken away from us. I would see it being brought back to us, and not only to us, but to every community in the world.
Amen. Thank you. Yes. Others? Yes, please.
The Sunday school and youth program would have exploded.
Yes, yes. Keep exploding, right? Because it's doing great. Okay, here we go. Thank you.
There would be no further need for many of the justice programs that we now offer. There would be no need for water ministry because everyone would have a home and enough food to eat, and that there would be justice in our legal system. And I could probably go on, but they just popped to the front of my mind.
Beautiful. Yes, I kind of think that the church exists to put itself out of a job, right? Absolutely. Yes. Another hand back here. There we go. Yes.
That there would be an even more deeper integration of what I think something we are moving toward, which is a real embracing of our prayer and the engagement in the healing of the world. And part of that would be also that we would become, as a community where we live God's love, more comfortable praying for ourselves with one another. But mostly that deep integration of the two back and forth together. They're both so already present in our community.
I would expect nothing less from somebody who has a healing prayer button on. That's beautiful. Absolutely right. No, that's perfect. I think we have time for one more. Yes, please.
What keeps popping into my head is that the church is a vibrant hub, that people feel welcome coming here, and that it extends throughout the region, that we're not just in this building, we're working across the communities, and there's that vibrancy of living God's love in everything we do.
It's just tumbling out of us, right? I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you all. Those questions, what I'm noticing a theme in all the different areas where I'm asking these questions, the themes I'm seeing are that, one, people have a lot of reasons to be proud of this church. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, so incredible. The way that this church has opened its heart to the Spirit is evident. The second thing I'm really seeing is that people are also feeling the opportunity to have the Spirit beckon us deeper, a kind of spiritual question of where have we grown. There's so many places where it's already happening, and it's not impossible. I think sometimes we think, oh, we're going to grow spiritually, and sometimes we hear the voice saying, I don't know how to do that. That's why we have each other. That's why the Holy Spirit is here to help guide us in that. And already we have these deep stories of how that can happen here. And then finally, the same ways that people are calling us forward to do justice work, to do healing work, to do prayer work, and to actually help change this world is kind of true across the board here at St. Columba's in different ways and in different people. But everybody here has a heart to know that it's not just about us enjoying a really nice church service. I've not heard anybody just stop there and say that that's all they want, which means we actually have the heart to do something. And we are already, and we can keep going. I just think that's incredible. So stay tuned for more of those for my findings as we go. We have only like 5 minutes left. So I said I'd give you a chance for more questions. If anybody has a couple of brief questions, and I won't be too loquacious. Yes, please, you have a question. Let me bring the mic to you. Here we go. I should have just held on to it. Here we go. You know what? Let me just make sure that's still on. Sorry. Try again.
I think it's very interesting that on your mother's side, you're part Chippewa. Now, what did the tribe think of you being a priest?
What did the tribe think of me being a priest? Well, it's been interesting. So my grandfather, when he was a little boy, he could pass as white. And living so close to the Canadian border, my great-grandmother was extremely scared that he was going to be taken away to one of the residential boarding schools. And so she moved from Canada to try to keep him safe. She moved into Maine, actually, all the way across the country to Maine, which is still close to Canada. I'm not quite sure what her thinking was, but I guess that's how it worked. And she taught him to try to pass as white for his whole life, which is how many people of my grandfather's generation lost their cultural heritage. In fact, it's one of the #1 ways of doing cultural genocide is by teaching people not to be taught, in other words, about who they are. So as my grandfather got older and he reestablished his own lineage, and he was always visiting family there, but he was starting to do their practices as well. He brought my mom and my aunt, and then later, as part of all that, my mom would bring me as well. So as I was with my indigenous healer, my traditional healer last time, it's an interesting thing because they see it as somebody who's bringing spiritual healing to the world, like any sort of spiritual healer in the tribe. And the indigenous beliefs often, they're so holistic and they're so spirit-centered that it was kind of like, well, this just makes sense. Like if you're talking about spirit, we're talking about spirit, and so it linked beautifully together. And because they have the mindset of you're trying to grow in capacity as an elder, I think they were like, yes, you should go on this fast so that you can grow in that way. So they've been beautiful. Thank you. One last question. Okay.
Is there a story behind your last name?
Is there a story behind my last name? Yes, there is. So my maiden name is Hillary Dowling. My husband's, I guess, bachelor name, you might say, was Ken Reinholtz. And when we got married, we wanted to have a name that was common together. But we didn't want to hyphenate, and we didn't want to just take one name or the other. So we thought a long time about like what sort of name would we take, kind of Abraham Sarah like, right? You know, like to honor this new covenant that we were entering into. And rain just kept coming up in all these really important moments for us. Like when we got engaged, it rained. On our wedding day, it rained. Like all these sorts of things. And so we changed a vowel and we put them together, and Reinholtz Dowling became raining together. So that's how our last name came to be, and it has served us well as a family. So yeah, thanks for asking. All right, friends, we have another service, so I will have to close it here, but I want to just thank you again for calling me as your rector. I'm so delighted to be with you all, and I'm looking forward to much more together. Blessings. Thank you. Thank you.